Welcome back, everyone. Next up, we have Gratomic Inc. It trades on the OTCQX under the symbol CBULF and on the TSXV under the symbol GRAT, and is a multinational company with projects in Namibia, Brazil, and Canada. The company is focused on becoming a leading global graphite supplier and aims to secure a strong position in the electric vehicle battery supply chain. Please welcome its president and CEO, Arno Brand. Welcome, Arno.
Thank you very much, Anna, and thank you for having me. I'm very happy to present Gratomic today at the Emerging Markets Conference 2022. We'll start off by normally we'll start off by trying to explain to people what Gratomic's all about. But today I thought, let's look at a grand picture of where the world's currently at and what problems we face going into the future to understand the supply and demand deficits that the market will face leading into 2025 for critical metals and minerals. And then we'll slowly step into what Gratomic is all about. 2012 was the start of the, somewhat call it the electrical evolution. It's when the world kind of realized that we needed to start doing things differently and slowly evolve as human race to phase out the internal combustion engine and find a suitable replacement for that. For the sake of our future generations. The suitable replacement was, particularly the electric powered vehicle, which, is something we can all relate to. We see Tesla in the news all the time. We see Volkswagen in the news all the time. And subsequently, rolling from 2012 into, where we are today in 2022, we've seen, sovereign funds starting to increase their investments into that sector quite dramatically. And, that number is now sitting at about $1 trillion that's being invested into a major global movement to phase out the internal combustion engine and slowly start evolutionizing the world into electric powered vehicles. Now, that all said and done, if we are going to maintain our trend to, make a target of having 40% of the vehicles on the road by, 2030 be electric power vehicles, it's going to have a heavy impact on the minerals that are required to go into those, into manufacturing the batteries that go into those vehicles. So essentially, that $1 trillion that we're looking being invested might not be sufficient. We're looking at supply deficits in the graphite industry alone, of about fourfold in the next, 5 to 10 years, which is something that we haven't really seen in the commodity world before. I mean, we've seen incremental increases in demand of 6 to 12% very frequently in graphite as a mineral. But in a year, we're poised to, start catching up with a demand that is, set right now to increase by about 400% over the next 10 years. We look at how many miners are coming up and about around the world on an annual basis, and you can generally expect 1 or 2 mines to come online, with a capacity of between 20 to 100,000 tons capacity a year. Here we are looking at a market that is going to expand to the order of about 4 million tons per annum in the next 10 years. So, we got to, slowly sit down and, remap out and rethink, our strategy as miners, and to how we're going to supply this, massively exploding, demand that's coming with these electric vehicles being built all around the world. So that's exactly what Gratomic is set up to do. We started off with an asset in Namibia in 2017 and started building out a 20,000 ton per year processing facility on the outcome vein graphite asset. which is one of the, top, top graphite assets in terms of grade in the world. And, halfway through our development, as we were talking to gigafactories, I think at that point in time, we were talking about 24 of them, and asking them the question of where do you think you're going to get your supply from? And most of the answers that came out of these gigafactories being funded by sovereign nations came up with the same answer. They said, we're just simply going to go into the market and procure it, through similar exchanges like the LME, and we looked at them in a funny way and said, well, have you ever tried to buy graphite on the open market? And they came to us and they basically, reluctantly said no. And, Urian started a massive scramble amongst them all to see if they could actually go into the market and procure graphite, procure nickel, procure copper. And, their projections, ran ahead of themselves. And before we could find ourselves, we realized, these guys are going to need, in essence of, 4 times the amount of minerals and metals that are actually available in the market right now to achieve their goals. So, as it always is, miners and end users starting working together, putting their heads together, trying to figure out, how are we going to gap up, how are we going to backstop the necessary mineral supply that we need in order to proceed to build out these massive gigafactories. And Gratomic kind of wedged itself right into the middle of that. And we put our heads down and we said, listen here, we've got one of the best mining teams in the world in terms of graphite. We've got one of the best processing teams in the world for graphite. We've got a phenomenal engineering base. We've got 108 employees around the world working around the clock, continuously looking at acquiring assets that really fit lower quartile cost curve descriptions as you would see it in the market. And, that's exactly what we set off to do. Got out there and started picking off the best assets that we could find in the world and partnered, at the back end with some really smart people through TM2 and Forge Nano. And, really put our head down and said, we're not going to sit around on a daily basis looking at our, resources grow in the ground. We want to be the company that goes out and builds all these mines so that we can, capture our market share into that emerging graphite market as we see it, growing about 400% in the next 10 years. So, Outcome is at a state right now in Namibia where, we expect to have our first product in bag by the 22nd of March. The Outcome Graphite project is built to a 20,000 ton per year output capacity, which can easily double to 40,000 tons per year. We over-engineered the front end and the back end of the circuit to accommodate easy expansion in the mid part of the circuit, which is the more integrated part of the circuit or the processing plant. We then went out and carefully examined what we need to do to the graphite before it needs to go into a battery. And, with a very green incentive, went and partnered with a company that could bring in a patented air classification system that we essentially bolted onto the end part of the drying circuit. And that particular technology allows us to eliminate acid treatment, which is the most expensive and deleterious part of the conventional way in which you would have treated graphite or processed graphite. And the results have been astonishing in that particular process alone. But not going to stop there. We went on, we acquired one of the highest grade deposits we saw in the market at a particular time. It was Capão Grosso, running at about 15-16% head grade in Brazil. Same thing, rolled out a team, offered a foot down on the accelerator to make sure we can bring that to market within an 18-month to 2-year timeline. That one we're probably right now looking at about 40,000 tons per year output capacity, which is obviously going to poise Gratomic to become one of the largest producers outside of China and Brazil. And, we're planning to continue with like several other acquisitions in the near future to continue capturing as much of that growing market share as possible, with a key focus on which most of the companies have not really focused on, which is really focusing on assets that are capable of making money, in the worst and the best of markets. And, we refer to that generally in the industry as, lower quartile cost curve assets, meaning that, you're sitting on the lower quartile of, operational costs within that commodity class. And the only way you can really do that is by focusing on assets with phenomenally high head grades, and such as outcome and cup and grosso. And then, essentially looking into the future, there will be a component of added value manufacturing going into the company. You never want to be the company that stagnates and stops growing, by pinching its revenue stream at a fixed number. You always want to add to that for shareholders as the company grows. So, we went out and partnered with a company called Forge Nano. Forge Nano in itself is owned by two major companies called Volkswagen and LG Chem. And together with Forge Nano, we're going to merge a partnership that is going to start utilizing a very special technology called atomic layer deposition. This is a technology of the future. It's a technology that is specifically designed to minimize the requirement of coating your graphite, after it comes out of the micronized and spheronized process. And, there's a massive cost advantage to that, but there's also an advantage within that allows, the graphite to be optimized within the graphite, within the anode, which is mostly made out of graphite. We have another fairly unique partnership that not many other graphite miners has in the world. We have a fairly, positive outlook and very innovative outlook when it comes to, the way we conduct our business. We went and partnered with a critical metals exchange. Essentially, this backed by the problem that the critical metal requirements or the gigafactories were faced with earlier, not being able to obtain graphite out of the marketplace. We went and partnered with a company called TM2. They're based out of London, Iceland, and Dubai. I think they got 49 offices around the world now, and over 149 partnerships. Within that partnership, they've now built almost 24 gigafactory partnerships. And your Gratomic is at the forefront again, marching into the front and saying, hey, we're gonna not only solve the problem that you guys are facing on the supply side by entering into direct consumer agreements with you or supply agreements with you, we're also going to come and solve your problem so that you now have an exchange that is, open through which you can go and buy graphite in the open market as you see you need it. And so the guys from TM2 is very smart. They've been around. A lot of these guys branched out of the LME, and essentially there's a lot to look forward to with TM2 on the horizon. That partnership is really in its infancy, but you can expect that to become one of the pillars of Gratomic's, innovative outlook on how we're gonna, help these gigafactories acquire, the graphite that they need in order to roll out the batteries that they need for the revolution of the electric vehicle going forward. So we have a phenomenal team that now has the experience to roll out on every single one of these projects. We've done a phenomenal job building out the first of our assets, which is the outcome graphite asset. There's a lot more to expect in the new year. which is 2022. There's a lot more coming in 2023. We can promise our shareholders that this is definitely not going to be the end of our mine building experience, but probably looking forward to adding multiple new mines to the company as it's rolling out into becoming a major graphite producer in a world where there's not a lot of people out there doing the same. And I don't really have much else to say, Anna. With that, I'll hand it over to a Q&A and we can go from there.
Thank you, Arno. Yes, we got some questions for you. Okay. From Christine Dennis, she wants to know what are Gratomic's plans for 2022?
Well, for 2022, we've got a very aggressive drilling campaign going on Capão Grosso and Outcome at the same time. Outcome has been a very special type of deposit. We reverse engineered the entire conventional process. And, in terms of drilling this deposit, we've been drilling for 4 years now, and we continue drilling every day, trying to put together the full extent of what currently looks like a 15-kilometer strike on an ore body that just keeps going forever. We thought that was pretty intense until we started drilling down to 240, 300 meters and still hit graphite on it. So we hunkered down and decided, okay, we're going to just keep drilling until we have the full extent of this thing mapped up comprehensively. We see 10, 20 years there already. We got to keep going in order to, fully understand, how we optimize, what we've got there. We'll see our initial resource reports coming out during the year. Capão Grosso, the same. We've got Capão Grosso drilling 5,000 meters onto a maiden resource. We'll see Outcome and Capão Grosso probably emerge at the same time with both their resources. As soon as that resource study is out Capão Grosso, and it says, yes, we would have already done all the metallurgical test work on Capão Grosso, and then we'll just bring in the Sprinter team and do exactly what we did on Outcome. Give it a year and a half and, start her up. And that's essentially our mentality. We do not waste time. We do not look at resources in the ground as, a potential acquisition target for next company to come by. We are going to be that company that goes out and buys everybody. And that's our full motive. Very interestingly, Outcome is probably at the cusp right now where it is ready to go. Come 22 March, product is going into the bags, and we're not putting them into the bags to store them in our backyard. Targeted to go out, and fill the buckets of the people that need them. And from what I've seen, they really need them. And that's particularly where our focus lies for this year. Definitely going to do a lot more with Forge Nano and TM2 in the near future. Forge Nano is out there waving the flag, carrying their shareholders, Volkswagen and LG Chem on their sleeve and saying, listen here, guys, we are going to come and we're going to come hard with our ALD technology. And we are going to, create the optimal anode material for that battery so that your vehicles can start going, further, without any interruption. The batteries would last longer, so you don't have to switch them out every 7 years, and so on and so forth. That's something that you guys can definitely look forward to for the rest of this year.
Thank you for that thorough answer. We have a question about your future. Ben Manning wants to know, where do you see Gratomic 5 years from now?
5 years is a long time. Most companies can't even think a year in the future. But at Gratomic, we've really mapped it out well. We've brought in one of the most experienced management teams that market's ever seen in graphite. This team's really mapped out a solid future for the company. 5 years from now, our intention is to grow into 100,000 ton per year producer. By that time, we want to own our own micronizing and spherinizing equipment and really emphasize in building out the industrial park that we've been putting together in Lidritz Bay, where we're quickly becoming one of the largest landowners. We're going to be putting together a massive warehouse facility where we can, micronize, spherize indoors so that it's not in everybody's faces. We're going to come out and put in our artificial atomic layer deposition, warehouse and facility backed by Forge Nano, backed by Volkswagen and LG Chem. We're going to go put that out in the warehouses so that we can make our own atomic layer deposition graphite anode material that is the perfect spherinized and micronized material for the anode material for these gigafactories again.
Wow. So Hope Goodwin wants to know a little bit about the strategy behind Gratomic's acquisition campaigns and what exactly does it seek to achieve?
So I get asked this question, more often than not. Where we find ourselves today is, we really had to prove ourselves with the outcome graphite asset, which was an easy asset. Working with something that's running 40 to 55% head grade in the ground, economics come easy. And it's easy to justify, building a processing facility at scale. Outcome now on its own, unfortunately, even if we drill out that 15-kilometer strike, and even though we can expand, to 40,000, 60,000 tons a year in the near future, it's not enough. The world's going to need an additional 4 million tons of graphite. And you're going to need a lot of graphite deposits to feed that market. And people cannot understand the pressing need from these gigafactories and the stresses that they're putting on the miners. You look at China alone. China was a net exporter of graphite. They were sending their graphite all around the world, cheapest prices that anybody could match. They're an importer now. They're bringing in graphite from all around the world because they simply don't have enough to fill their own need anymore. And the rest of the world was sleeping and really not focusing on, catching up. So, no graphite, no battery for the time being anyway. So, essentially, Gratomic's got to keep going out there. We've got a very, very smart technical team that has the exact requirements to hit that lower quartile cost curve asset base. And, if the grade is there and the metallurgy is there and it's in a jurisdiction that, is somewhat, kind of place where you're not going to get shot at on a regular basis, we're going to be there. And, we're going to keep buying assets everywhere we go, as long as they fit our criteria for lower cost quartile. And, mark my words, it's going to happen again and again and again, and we will not stop. We will put the, Gratomic guys out there, we'll, have them do their thing on the ground, get out there, engineer, build, and once we're ready, start selling. And we'll do that probably until we're old and gray in the next 10 years. But, maybe not gray, but old. So in the next 10 years, we will not stop acquiring assets and building them out because there's just no chance we can fail the community. Like, we have to keep building. And, finding a rare graphite deposit or finding a good graphite deposit, it's easier to find an elephant downtown Manhattan. It's really, really hard to find a good quality asset. So if you find it, you got to take it, right? We know what works. We know what the economics need to look like. We know what the deposit needs to look like. So let's go out there and buy the ones that we know we want to develop in the next 10 years and develop them.
Well, Daryl Willis wants to know about an update on your company's resource drilling campaigns and how you see that unfolding over the next year.
did touch base on that a little earlier, but I'll reiterate that for the audience. The outcome drilling campaign's been going strong for 4 years. And by the time we're done drilling that, to its full extent, you probably expect another 100 to 200,000 meters of drilling. So once we're done drilling 200 kilometers, yes, we'll be done. For now, we're putting a hell of an effort into it. We're going to continue drilling. It's one of those things where you think the deposit's going to pinch out at 240 meters at depth. Next thing you know, you're at 500 meters and the graphite's still running strong. It's not something that you just stop when you know there's still more to go. It's an incredibly scientific approach. We want to make sure that we bring the right resource to the market so that, we can say to shareholders, hey guys, we were not just the, average promoter on the street saying, look at my drill core, look at my drill core. We actually went out from a, major perspective and said, we rounded up our first 20 years. Now we can build it out from here. Every 20 years you add to that is you double production, and you understand our formula, you understand our rollout. Capão Grosso, drills are going strong. 2 drills on the ground today, adding a third, 5 holes done. All 5 holes had graphite. That's always a good start. Visually, outcome and Capão Grosso could have been twins on separate continents. Beautiful, beautiful graphite that we're seeing in Capão Grosso right now matches exactly what we see at outcome. Hitting these massive bludges of vein, which we did not expect. Having the only thing better than having 1 vein graphite deposit, I guess, is having 2. But essentially, yes, both assets are in that incredibly high quartile, lower quartile, very high grade, section within your operating cost structures of all the graphite mines around the world that you want to see. Grade is king. You have grade on your side, you're off to the races. And
last question. Sorry, Arno. Last question for you. We've got so many questions, but we're running out of time. Fred Cruz wants you to elaborate on your partnership with TM2. Quickly tell us about that.
I did tackle that concept. The whole idea behind the TM2 partnership is give people an avenue to institutionalize graphite as a commodity. You make it available for critical metal funds to buy. You make it available for institutions to buy. You've seen Sprott out there buying uranium in the market all the time. You saw the UPCs jump up doing the same. Graphite doesn't have that. TM2 will allow people to participate on an institutional level in the graphite market. It's the one thing that was really missing in graphite. There was no institutional angle to really get exposure to the commodity. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're just making it available so that, everybody on the street, everybody on this conference right now can go into the market for TM2 and say, hey, I want a pound of graphite. I want a ton of graphite. That's it.
Well, this is a fascinating topic. Thank you so much for your time. You've got so many more questions from our viewers, but we are out of time. So you're just going to have to join us again so we can answer these. But we'll send these questions to you, Arno. Thank you so much for this great presentation.
Thank you. Thank you, Anna. Have a lovely day.
All right. Stay with us, everyone. We have another exciting company coming up next.